once again the end of another month, and that means that it is time to tell you guys what I read in that month. If you're new here, hi, my name is Katie. I post a lot of book content on my channel as well as hobby and lifestyle sometimes, and if you're not new here, welcome back. Jumping straight into statistics, as always, in the month of May, I ended up reading 10 books total, which I'm really proud of. That's the most books I've read in any month so far this year. Getting into my genre breakdown, I read 3 literary fictions, 2 romances, 2 graphic novels, which were actually rereads, which we'll talk about here in a minute once we get to them, 1 mystery, 1 memoir, and 1 fantasy, and then I will also have on screen my average rating and the total number of pages that I read in May. So overall in May, quantity-wise, I was pretty proud with all the books that I was reading. I feel like it was an average reading month, or maybe even a little bit above average regarding my ratings and how I felt about everything. Looking down at some of the physical copies I had though, there are definitely some standouts that I'm really excited to talk to you guys about, and if any of these books were read in reading vlogs, I will mention that while I'm talking about them, and I'll have them linked down below in the description. For this month's wrap up, I'm gonna do something different. I've seen a few creators do this, where instead of talking about the books in the order that they read them, they talk about them from least favorite to most favorite, or lowest rated to highest rated, and I thought it would be a fun way to kind of switch things up for my monthly wrap up. So let's go ahead and start with my lowest rated book, which was actually a new release that came out in the month of May, and I ended up getting an advanced reader copy of it, and I was really excited to read it, but unfortunately, this book did end up falling short in my eyes, and that is The Players Club by Rachel Mills. I'd never read anything like this before, or anything by this author. I believe this was her debut novel. This book is set in England, and you're following our main character, Beth Greenwood, as she lives a very average and ordinary life, until she slowly gets introduced to the idea of life playing, which is basically just the process of becoming a completely different person, and there's different ways that it varies. You can be a very extreme life player and wanting to play an extreme life out in a larger or longer scenario, or it can be pretty mundane or more of a quick life play. And if you read the book, it gets more into it. But basically through life playing, you can become anyone you dream. And she starts out doing it by herself, and then she meets a club of people who have been doing this longer than she has. And she soon begins to feel a lot more fulfilled in her life with this new hobby and new friends. But her sister Elspeth, who originally in Beth's eyes had this picture perfect life, she had a great job, she was married, she had a big house. Elspeth really had anything out of life that Beth could ever dream of, but Elspeth's life is kind of quickly unfolding in a way that they weren't really expecting. And from the brief synopsis I just gave you, you're probably like, okay, that kind of sounds interesting. It almost has a magical realism element to it, while also going into some deeper, harder parts of life. But unfortunately, I feel like this is one of those times where my expectations might have gotten the best of my reading experience, because this story had so much potential, but it really missed the mark for me. Because this book is described as these women transforming into other people, I really did think there was going to be magical realism, but there wasn't. So when I realized there wasn't magical realism, I was still invested. I was like, okay, let's see where this is gonna go. But as I kept reading and as they kept going through more life play scenarios, I feel like it just got even more unrealistic, the things that they were doing or willing to do to become somebody else. And I also hate to say it, but our main character Beth was quite dull while also being really unhinged. And it was really hard for me to pinpoint a more unique personality in Beth, because she didn't really had a lot of sense of self. So even though she was going through extremely relatable things, it made her harder for me to connect to her. And with the other characters, a lot of the conflicts that ended up happening felt very forced or sudden, or even at times random, especially because we didn't get to know the other characters in the club very well. There were also 3 parts to this book, and part 1, I feel like my interest was at its peak, and it just kept waning each part I was reading. The story felt like it was dragging along to finish it. Every time I felt like something big was happening, it just easily suppressed into nothing with almost 0 consequences. And at the end of the book, to wrap things up and tie up all those loose ends, we ended up getting info dumped at, and it was in a way where the characters were telling us what was going on instead of showing us through different types of conflicts that we could have watched them go through, and it was just really unsatisfying and frustrating for me as a reader. I feel like one of the only things I didn't mind about this book was the writing. I felt like it was nice, it was easy to understand, I liked the word choices, but overall the story of this one just did not add up to me. I'm gonna rate this one a 2.5 stars. Looking back, I probably should have DNF'd this, but it was an advanced reader copy, and I also wanted to know how things were gonna wrap up. But unfortunately, after finishing it, I don't recommend this book. Next up is my most recent read from the library, and that is When the Crows Away by Auralee Wallace. This is the second book in the Even Fall Bed and Breakfast mystery series. There's one other book called In the Company of Witches that I read last fall, and I really did enjoy it. These are cozy mysteries, and as somebody who gets scared of quite literally everything, they're not too high stakes for me, and I really did enjoy the first one. I think I rated it 4 stars. It was just really fun and silly, didn't take itself too seriously, while it still had me wanting to read more. This one, unfortunately, I feel like missed the mark for me. But before we get into my thoughts, let me share a synopsis. This book is following our main character, Bryn, and she's a part of a family of witches who own a bed and breakfast in the small town of Evenfall. She lives with her 2 aunts and her uncle, and each of them has their own certain strength or thing, almost like genre of being a witch. One of her aunts puts spells into her food that can make people feel a certain type of way. Her uncle has visions where he can kind of see into the future. Her other aunt is really good at growing plants, and Bryn herself can talk to the dead. The fact that they're witches is suspected in their small town, but it's not like widely talked about, and nobody really calls them out for it. But the people in the town do think that they're like a little weird, like something's going on in a kooky way with the Warren family, but they're also willing to help out in the town a lot with a lot of different things. And in the first book, because Bryn can talk to the dead, she ends up trying to help solve a murder, and she is back at it again in this next one whenever one of the shop's owners ends up mysteriously passing away, and she is trying to help him get to the bottom of it while also helping him trying to find peace with his passing. I feel like this one, in my opinion, does not measure up to the first one, because in the first one, there was so much more magic, and that is why I love books about witches. If you're gonna say that it's a book about a witch, I need to see spells. I need to see them using that cauldron, and I want to see a ton of it, because that is what makes books about witches so special and more intriguing than just any other regular schmegular book. And I feel like this one had way less magic in it, unfortunately, so automatically I was a little bit disappointed. I also feel like the mystery fell short. I didn't really care about the mystery as much as the people in Evenfall and what they were getting up to, and like the little drama and gossip about what was going on in the town. I also feel like because this is a sequel, we didn't get a ton of character development, which I was expecting because we're getting more time with these characters. There were definitely still like cute and sweet and funny moments where like I would have a little like giggle or a scoff here and there. But overall, I am a little bit disappointed in this. I think I'm gonna rate this anywhere from a 3-star to a 3.5, probably just a 3-star. Now that I'm actually thinking about it, I had a little bit of fun. It was mainly just an okay reading experience, but I don't think I'm gonna remember this storyline or these characters even a few months from now. And you're also probably wondering, Katie, why are you reading a witchy book like this in the spring? And that is because it is set in the spring. Because I almost read this last fall, and then I figured I was set in the spring, so I was waiting for now. And this was actually on my TBR for the year. So overall, I am glad that I read it, and it is different from what I normally read, but I don't know if I really would recommend this one a ton either. I would definitely recommend the first one, In the Company of Witches, and if you really, really like that one, I would recommend the second one. Or I would just recommend reading the second one in the fall, because I think that even though it is set in the spring, reading it in the spring didn't really matter as much as I thought it was going to. This next book I'm going to talk about might shock you where it sits in my ranking for the books that I read this month, and honestly, I am quite shocked too, because before I read this book, because of how many people enjoyed it, I thought it was probably going to be a 5-star or at least a high 4-star rating. But unfortunately, The X-Files by Jessica Joyce was one of those books that I thought I was going to enjoy a lot more than I did. And I feel like a lot of the times when I have that feeling with a book, it kind of makes me feel guilty. Like I'm like, why am I not enjoying this? Force myself to enjoy it. But then I once again have to remind myself that reading is subjective, and that's okay. This book is following our main character, Georgia, and her childhood best friend, Adam, is getting married, and she is the best woman. But the best man for the wedding is Eli, who she also met whenever they were younger. They thought they were going to be together forever. They ended up moving cities together for one of their jobs, and then all of a sudden, their relationship ended up coming to an end. They haven't really spent a lot of time together in the past 5 years since they've been broken up, but now Adam's wedding is kind of turning into a shit show. So the best woman and the best man are willing to do anything, including spending a lot of time together alone, to help try and fix things so their best friend can actually have a good wedding day. A lot of people say that if you enjoyed Happy Place, you would really like this book, and I can definitely see why. Happy Place is one of my favorite books of all time. I relate to it on such a deep level in so many different ways, but the number one way being that it talks about friendship in such a realistic way. How growing up and having the same friends for such a long time is so weird, because your friendship is going to go through a lot of different changes because everybody's going through different things all at different times. Or there was a time where you all live near each other and then people are moving away. There's just so many different things about being an adult and how friendships change that book just perfectly depicted. And I feel like this book perfectly depicted it as well. More towards the beginning of the book, I was getting those feelings of really enjoying it. I was really enjoying the couple. There was a lot of tension. I found myself relating to Georgia. She's a very type A, people people pleaser, planner type of person, and I am very much like that as well. So a lot of things she struggled with, like explaining her feelings to people and being open, but being afraid to do that because she feels like people are gonna leave her if she is completely and totally herself, or if she's seen as imperfect in any way, was definitely a relatable experience to read about. And even though I did like the couple themselves, the tension in this book just broke way too quickly for my liking. One of the biggest things about a second chance romance is you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're waiting for them to finally give in and be like, we're meant to be together. Like, what are we doing? We're being so silly. And I wanted more of that. I wanted to feel them yearn so much more. And I feel like because this book is compared to Happy Place in a way, it did definitely set my expectations a little bit higher, because the yearning done in that book is top tier for me. It is so good. The other thing I need in a second chance romance for it to really work and for me to really feel it is a lot of moments from the past. And I feel like this book did that decently well, but I honestly wish that there would have been more. Last year, I ended up reading Jessica Joyce's debut novel, You with a View, and I liked the storyline and I thought it was unique, but the writing really just didn't click in my brain for some reason. And I did enjoy the writing a lot more in this book, but for some reason, there's still a little bit of a disconnect for her writing style in my brain that I don't completely understand. But as I was reading more and more, I was pinpointing a few things that made me feel that way. And one of those things was she does this thing where it's just a large recollection of moments where she's telling us what's happening instead of showing us, even though those things that are happening are in the present moment. And I feel like that can work sometimes, but it just happened so much that it really started to bother me. And obviously that can happen sometimes. A book can only be so long, but it happened so much to where a lot of the times I felt like we weren't fully present in a lot of big moments that we should have been with our character. And knowing how Georgia was feeling while all these big things were happening. Moments like the rehearsal dinner, Eli's best man speech, even dancing at a wedding. There was so much opportunity for tension. One of my favorite songs is Dressed by Taylor Swift, and she says, our secret moments in a crowded room, they have no idea about me and you. Peak lyricism. And I feel like a lot of the time when there is a hidden aspect to a relationship, that's how I want to feel. And this did not make me feel it to the extent that I wanted to. There were also quite a few awkward word choices in my opinion, and even though she ended up recollecting things in one big paragraph instead of having us there in those moments with the characters, I feel like it still did drag out. And overall, I was just a little bit disappointed about my experience reading this book. I think I would rate it like a 3.5 at this point. I still enjoyed my time reading it. It's just not one that I really connected with a ton because there were so many other things taking me out of the story, unfortunately. I did end up reading the X-Files in a hobby week in my life that I posted a few weeks ago, so I'll have that link down below. And I also read the next book I'm about to talk about in my last video that I posted a few days ago, so I'll have that link down below as well. And that book is the book that everybody and their mom has been talking about recently, and that is Into the Blue by Brodie. This is a love story that spans decades following our main character, AJ Graves. We start with her at the age of 17, and she has these big dreams of writing for SNL one day, but instead she is currently stuck working at her local video store until one day everything seems to change when Noah Drew, who is our male main character and the youngest in a line of a very famous acting family, strutts on in and becomes her coworker, and things just change her whole entire life trajectory from there. One summer they end up exploring acting, specifically improvisation, together with the help of Noah's aunt, and through that experience they develop an insane bond and have this incredible chemistry that will keep them tied together for the rest of their lives and leads them back together in a lot of random circumstances in their future. One of my favorite parts about this book was the nostalgia it brought on, especially because they work at a video store. I remember going to the family video with my family. We would all try and agree on a movie or pick out a few video games here and there, go home, put a frozen pizza in the oven, and just have family time. And I love the 2000s and books set in the 2000s because of the nostalgic feeling that they bring to me. And the first part of this book where they are beginning their connection was definitely my favorite. In my opinion, the beginning was so perfectly planned out, every detail in its perfect little place, and it made for a really enjoyable reading experience. There's also some interesting things about the format of this book too. The whole format of this book is a continuous chapter, and there are page breaks in this first part, but once we get to part 2, I was interested to see if she was going to keep that trajectory going. So when I started reading part 2 and there was a definitive chapter end, it really made a statement, not only because she decided to end it format wise, but it was because it displayed the ending of a certain part of the character's relationship, which I really enjoyed how that paralleled each other. I also grew up doing theater, So getting to see the behind the scenes of a lot of the TV and film and even SNL was super interesting to hear about, and I ended up learning a lot of different things about the industry as a whole. So I'm definitely on the hunt for more books with this backdrop. So if you guys have any, let me know in the comments. I really enjoyed Emma Brodie's writing and her stylistic choices. Her descriptions of not only characters, but moments that they were going through were so unique, and it led me to connect with the characters and the story in general on a decently deep level, and the tension in here was so good. Like, you could cut it with a knife, as they say. The writing had my stomach twisting, it had me feeling giddy, but unfortunately, it then started to feel incredibly repetitive once we got to the end. In my opinion, honestly, it just feels like this book should have been shorter, because I think that I could have continued that reading experience, that amazing reading experience that I was having, if it wouldn't gotten to the moment where it was just repetition central. With the relationship that they were having, there was so much back and forth, and you guessed it, back and forth, that I just started to feel a little bit frustrated with the characters. And you know what? I get it. I understand why this happened this way. But there comes to a point where it's just too much and they were getting in each other's way, especially whenever the plot more towards the ending was so interesting, not only for themselves and their relationship, but just in general for the plot line of the story from where we came in the beginning to where they got now. So because of those things, the spark of the relationship that I was feeling more towards the beginning just kind of died out for me more towards the end. And as I kept reading, it just felt like the rest of the book wasn't handled with as much care and attention as the beginning of the book. So because of that, I think I'm gonna stick with like a 3.75, maybe a 4-star, maybe a 3.5. I don't know. I'm all over the place with this book. I will have my final rating up on Goodreads and or Fable eventually when I decide how I feel. But this is just another one of those times where I start a book, it has so much potential, I'm really loving it, and then the ending just falls a little bit flat. I didn't really know where to put this next book because I don't normally rate memoirs, because it's a story about somebody's life, and that just kind of feels a little sticky and achy to me a little bit. But I really enjoyed this memoir, so I'm gonna put it right here where we're starting to get into the 4 stars and above section. The memoir I ended up reading, though, was Semi-Well Adjusted Despite Literally Everything by Alyson Stoner. This is one that has been on my radar for quite some time, and I knew I wanted to listen to it. I listen to pretty much every single memoir that I read, because the people who write the memoir about their own life normally are the ones who are narrating it, and I really enjoy that experience, being able to hear somebody's own life story from themselves firsthand. And Alyson Stoner's memoir did not disappoint. This was all about her growing up as a Disney kid, growing up in the public eye, dealing with fame at such a young age, how it affected her growing up, how it affected her family, how it affected how she sees the world. It was so unbelievably interesting, like every memoir in this, I guess, memoir subgenre is, especially because at that time when she was growing up in stardom, nobody was talking about this. And I feel like nowadays they are finally almost like breaking free. We're breaking free! You see what I did there? But in all seriousness, this is currently in my top 3 memoirs of all time. If you're somebody who has never really been immersed in the memoir genre before, you've never really been interested in it at all either, I would highly recommend you to reconsider, because there is so much that I have learned from listening to memoirs, but also so much that I feel like has been easier for me to accept about myself and the feelings that I have about myself because of hearing other people experience those things. It's almost a very healing process that memoirs can give you sometimes, because they're real people telling you real stories, even though they are in the public eye and they might not have had the same exact experience as you. But being able to learn from other people's experiences as humans is truly such a gift. So I am honestly begging you to reconsider if you have never read a memoir. I would highly recommend not just Alyson Stoner's memoir, but Dinner for Vampires by Bethany Joy Lenz and From Here to the Great Unknown by Lisa Marie Presley and Riley Keough. These are my top 3. I cannot recommend them enough. They are absolutely fantastic. And the next 2 books I read were the graphic novels I talked about earlier in my genre breakdown, and they were also rereads. And those graphic novels were Heartstoppers Volumes 1 and 2. I love this series so much. I believe I read them for the first time in 2024 or 2023. I can't remember. But ever since I read them, they have just held such a special place in my heart, not just because I love the story of Nick and Charlie themselves, but also because it was my first experience reading a graphic novel as an adult. And I feel like ever since I read these, I've been wanting to read more graphic novels. So if you ever have graphic novel recommendations for me, please leave them in the comments below, because I absolutely love reading them. If you haven't read Heartstopper, this is following our main characters, Charlie and Nick. Charlie is openly gay at his school, and he got bullied for it a lot in the previous year, and him and Nick end up meeting in their homeroom. They're on the rugby team together, they become quick friends, and it soon one ends up leading to more. They're in high school, so there's a lot of self-discovery in here, not just about sexuality, but about other things in the rest of the series as well. In reading the series the first time, I felt this way, but I'm sure I'm gonna feel this way again. But no matter who you are, no matter what your sexuality is, I feel like you can get so much out of reading this series because there are so many relatable things that they go through, especially the experience of falling in love for the first time. The love story in here is just so sweet and pure and wholesome. I absolutely love Nick and Charlie to bits, and I love the rest of the story as well, and I cannot wait to read it. The reason why I am rereading it is because the 6th and final volume, unfortunately it's going to be the final volume, of Heartstopper comes out at the beginning of July. So in the month of June, I'm hoping to read, or I guess reread, the other 3 volumes that I haven't reread yet in time for the 6th one, so I can be all caught up and up to date whenever that one comes out. I cannot wait. This is my 3rd time rereading this first one, but I haven't reread the rest of the series ever, so I forgot that one of my favorite parts of this entire series is Nick and his relationship with his mom. It is just so sweet, and I absolutely love and adore their relationship. I just love this series as a whole. I think I originally rated these first 2 graphic novels 4 stars, but this is overall a 5-star series for me. I love it so much. If you have not read it, please do yourself the favor. The next book is another book that everybody has been talking about, and that is Yesteryear by Caro Burke. This book is following our main character, Natalie, and she is a tradwife influencer. Think Ballerina Farm. If you know who I'm talking about, it is kind of a little bit scary how similar she is to the main character. Obviously, I don't know her personally, but that is just an example. You quickly start to realize as you're reading that Natalie is an incredibly insufferable main character. Like, you hate her, and you're supposed to hate her. That is the point of this book. She hides a lot of things from her followers. A lot of her inside thoughts should definitely not be outside thoughts. And she ends up trying to paint this perfect picture of who society thinks she should be as a wife and a mother. And then one day, she ends up waking up in the late 1800s, and she actually has to be a tradwife without a ton of support. And throughout the entirety of the book, you're going back and forth from the present day timeline of her trying to figure out how to be a mother, a wife, and her becoming an influencer, as well as her back in the 1800s struggling to figure out how to actually be a tradwife. I really enjoyed the conversation Caro Burke brought to the table of society's views of conservatism and religion, and Natalie's experience with that being shoved down her throat, and how she ends up becoming something that it seems that she didn't even want to be. It leads her to gaslighting herself into being like, okay, like, I hate everything that's going on, but I'm gonna pretend that I'm actually really happy. There's also a parallel throughout the entirety of this book of a more modern era woman that Natalie had as her college roommate named Rena. And she thinks of Rena quite often, and she's like, wow, I bet Rena's so miserable. Like, she has to work up in her career. She wants to be a corporate girly. Who even knows if she'll have a family? I'm so happy. I'm so much happier than Rena. That means I must be doing something right. And yet she's so miserable. I also really enjoyed the commentary on influencers and social media in general. Like, getting to see behind the scenes of an influencer is so interesting because you only do see what they give you. Like, it is a highlight reel. And you got to see that through another character's perspective almost of Natalie. And I thought that was really interesting. This book also talked a lot about being a mother because Natalie has a lot of children, and it was really interesting because I myself am not a mom. Seeing her experience through motherhood as somebody who has never given themselves the choice or even the thought of not being a mother was really a jarring experience to read about, in all honesty. Honestly, this whole book was a jarring experience, but also just so unique. I feel like I don't read a ton of books with unlikable characters, and I'm starting to realize I enjoy that because it's just something different. More towards the end, there were so many moments where I was shocked, like I was literally gasping at what I was reading, and there were a few things that left me feeling a little bit queasy from the descriptions, but there was something about Caro Burke's writing that just immediately clicked with my brain. I enjoyed it so much. The irony and the funny little moments too just felt so on the nose, and it worked so well for the way that she wrote this book. I really did enjoy it. I feel like there's really nothing else like this, and I feel like I ate up every second of it. Do I think that the end made a lot of sense or was wrapped up in a really satisfying or great way? Honestly, no. I think the end was probably the most disappointing part for me. I really would have loved some more explanation and some more answers, but I really enjoyed the conversation that this book brought forth. I feel like it's important, especially in this day and age. I feel like I would rate it maybe a 4.25, still not 100% sure because this one I did finish just a few days ago, but I really did enjoy this book. I feel like if it had a stronger ending, it would have been a 5-star. Speaking of 5 stars, I actually had 2 5-star reads this month that we are about to get into. The first one is Oathbound by Tracy Deonn. This is the third and final book that is currently out in the Legendborn cycle. There's a 4th one that I literally cannot wait to get my hands on whenever it comes out. In this series, we're following our main character Bree, and she's a part of an early college program at the University of North Carolina. She is going through a lot whenever she first starts the program. Her mother just recently passed away, and she's obviously in a new place trying to figure out what she wants to do, who she wants to be. And one day she's at a party and she ends up stumbling upon something that she really shouldn't have been, and it gets her involved in things that she probably really shouldn't have been, but it leads her to a secret society and figuring out so many other things she didn't even know about herself that you continue to figure out throughout the series. It is so incredible. One of the most unique magic systems and series in general of the fantasy genre that I have ever read. I cannot recommend this series enough. If you're familiar with King Arthur and how that magic system works, this is a King Arthur retelling, but there is so much more to the magic and the rest of the story that isn't just involved with King Arthur. And as somebody who knew nothing really about King Arthur and the magic and all of that, I've really enjoyed the series and I feel like it's explained incredibly well. There was not a dull moment through the entirety of this book. It was so action-packed and incredibly well thought out. I feel like now that we're to the 3rd book in the series, I felt so connected to all the characters, and we got so many different POVs in this book that we didn't get prior. We used to just get Bree's POV, and now we got so many more because there was a different timing thing that was going on at the beginning of this book, and I feel like it was so well done and something that I was not at all expecting, but I'm really glad that it was done in the way that she decided to do it. I really love how Tracy Deonn still makes Bree the main character, obviously, but there were so many different times where we got to know so much about magic and about Bree through other characters instead of just having Bree experience the things or Bree telling us about the things herself. I also just absolutely love Bree as our main character. She is not only a baddie, but she has the biggest heart, and there's something that ends up happening in this book where you would think it would change her, but it doesn't. She is still the same old Bree, and all the decisions she makes are with her heart. It's always with the best intentions, and she just cares so much about the people that she loves and for people that she doesn't even know. I just love her to bits and pieces. She is also so powerful, and throughout the series, she has already learned so much in just 3 books, and I cannot wait. Again, I know I've already said it, but I cannot wait for that 4th book. The love triangle in this series honestly reminds me a lot of the Vampire Diaries, so if you enjoy that, it is decently similar, and obviously that makes sense why I enjoy the love triangle, because I absolutely love the Vampire Diaries. This is also a YA fantasy series, and the beginning of the series does feel a little bit more YA, but as we keep going, it starts to feel less and less young adult. In my opinion, this book was absolutely brilliant. It has been so long since a fantasy book has made me feel this way, and again, I cannot wait for the next book. This next book is another 5-star read. It's the book that you guys actually ended up choosing for me to read in the month of May, and it is my favorite book of the month, but also I think it's my favorite book I've read so far this year, which means that it could also end up being my favorite book of the year depending on what else I read this year, and that book is The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. Before I get into my synopsis, this book will be included in a reading vlog coming soon. It's going to be in a TBR tournament video. I just haven't decided which book I want to put it up against yet, so it'll be out sometime in the month of June, but this book is following our main character Sybil. She's in her vintage, as she likes to say, which just means that she is older. She is in her late 70s, and she writes letters to make sense of her life, and this book is entirely made of letters that have been written to Sybil or Sybil has written. There were letters that made me laugh. There were letters that made me cry. There were letters that had me thinking about my own life. It was just so beautifully done. And writing letters is something that Sybil has done through the entirety of her life, but we only really get to see the letters that she ended up writing starting in the year 2012. I love books that explore the human connection, and this book is one of those books. I was a little bit nervous because you do only get letters in this book, obviously, so I didn't know how much I was going to be able to connect with Sybil, our main character, or any of the other side characters, but weirdly enough, because letters themselves are so incredibly personal, it was so easy to connect with them and their stories and everything that they've been going through. Sybil herself has been through so much in her life, and even if I couldn't relate to the thing specifically at hand, there's just certain things that all humans can relate to, and the way that she wrote about them were so profound and beautiful while also being so heartbreaking. Here's a little picture of me reading some of this book. I was boo-hooing out the wazoo. I'm literally tearing up just thinking about this book in general. I I feel like this is one of those books where I was honestly left a little bit speechless. Like, I don't even know what else to say, and I feel so silly because I'm crying about words on paper. Here I am doing it again. This book, and not only our main character Sybil, but all the other characters that I got the perspectives of, made me feel so much. They felt so incredibly real. Sybil herself also loves to read, so I really enjoyed the commentary that she was having with her friends about swapping books back and forth, talking about book recommendations, just anything bookish, because obviously I love to read, and I talk about stuff like that with my friends too. There was one moment in this story, more towards the end, where she talked about rereading books at different moments in her life, and like, this is gonna have me tearing up too. Being able to read is such a gift and a beautiful thing we are allowed to do in this life. Reading is my favorite hobby, and it is one of the best things I have ever decided to have as a hobby, because you get to live so many different lives. And when she was talking about the first time she read this book versus the second versus the third at the different times in her life, it just made me so excited to be able to reread not only this book, but a lot of my favorite books someday, and hopefully get something different out of them. And since I am 50-ish years younger than Sybil is in this book, it just gave me so much hope and such a feeling of joy for my future. I feel like aging can be such a scary thing, but even in her vintage, Sybil is still her same stubborn, high-strung, classy self, and yet she still finds ways to fix things and leave life at peace. And guys, I'm about to start blubbering like a baby. I need to put it down. That reading vlog will be out soon with more and more thoughts on the Correspondent, but if you have not read it yet, I cannot recommend it enough. It's also under 300 pages, so if you're looking for something a little bit shorter, I think that book would be perfect. I'm not saying everybody's going to have the tearing up problem that I am having currently. I did just start my period, so it could also be that, but I still absolutely loved that book so much, and I hope that you guys absolutely loved watching this video. If you did, it would be super awesome if you could like and subscribe. It really helps out my channel, and if you have any thoughts on the books that I mentioned today, please do leave them down below so we can chat about them in the comments. If you watch until this far in the video, comment down below the writing on a letter with a pencil emoji. I don't know how else to explain that, but comment that emoji for my favorite book of the month, The Correspondent, so I know who the real ones are who watched until the very end. Also, let me know if you like the format of this video, talking in order of my least favorite to my most favorite books that I read that month, or if you have any other format ideas that might be interesting for my monthly wrap-up videos. And I think that is going to be it for this specific monthly wrap-up video. Thank you guys so much once again for watching. I love you guys so much. Hope you're all having an amazing day, and I will see you guys in my next video coming real soon. Bye guys. Peace.